Bernstein was really the sort of that mentor person for me. Just through fluky connection, I got an interview with him when I was a journalist at an old, now defunct magazine called Saturday Review, which is a national weekly, to do an interview with him as a composer about his ways and means as a composer. And the interview was turned down, so I wrote him a letter. I knew that he lived in the Dakota. I knew that the Dakota was 1 West 72nd Street in New York, so I sent him a note saying, you know, dear Leonard Bernstein, you know, I had heard that he was looking for a librettist, and he had had a couple of collaborations, well, actually several, on musicals, and now it was known that he wanted to work on an opera, and that he had tried at least one collaboration that hadn't really panned out. So I said, you know, please give me this interview. I'm an okay guy, and you know, if you don't like me, you can tell me to leave, and I'll just leave. Or we can go to the movies, or we could play anagrams. I knew that he liked anagrams, so. So I, you know, and I wrote P.S. interested in librettos, and I sent it off. And then 2 days later, I got up on my answering machine. I got this message saying, "Hello, this is Leonard Bernstein." And I immediately thought it was my best friend, who's a superb mimic. So I called him, and I was like, very funny, ha, ha, ha. And he said, call that number. So I called, and Bernstein said, listen, if you come on Tuesday, it was a Friday, you come on Tuesday and you bring me a sequel, a scenario for a sequel to Trouble in Tahiti, a piece that he'd written in 1952, the year before I was born, I'll give you an interview. Fair? I was like, sure, I'll be there. So I had all weekend to get to know all of his music, and you know, 3 days basically. So then we both met on the Tuesday, and he was kind of interviewing me for the possible position of librettist, and I was kind of interviewing him for this story, but basically neither was getting done. And he was in a very tetchy, grouchy place. So anyway, we had this meeting that was just a living hell, basically, and I thought, if I never see this guy again, I love him, I think he's cool, but if I never see him again, it probably is going to be better for me. Well, then, of course, then he took me down in his car, dropped me off where he was going, and I went the rest of the way home, and he said, I'll call you. And I thought, you know, whatever, slam. And then, so 3 days later, it's like, hello. And I'm like, hi, you know. And he says, have you been thinking? And I said, of course I've been thinking. I was half furious that he called me back, because I just thought, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? But then, of course, it was, you know, working with him was, an opportunity to learn so much about writing of lyrics, about music theater. There were a lot of convictions we had about musical theater and opera, American opera, which we actually shared, which was part of the reason that I think we clicked. And then we also had a subject to write about that we both needed to write about, which was a death in the family, because we'd both been through it in the previous year or so. It was one of the, you know, great intellectual companionships that I've ever had in my life. He was unbelievably brilliant and really paced you. It was like playing tennis with someone who was a lot better than you. But that you could play with, and that who wanted to play with you. That was the thing that was so amazing. So I think about him, you know, at least every few days, and I got his pictures up right there next to my dad and my, you know, sisters and brothers and everybody. And he remains a force in my inner life.